Hello everybody and welcome to Mr. Stansfield's Education Videos. Today we're going to be looking at how to create a grid overlay in Photoshop. So here we can see that we have the grid done. I'm going to go through the steps how we got here. There's a couple things to keep in mind. This grid, for example, is black and it's actually kind of blends in with this bottom part of the picture. So once we get to that step, we can see we can really make it any color that we want. So the first thing that we're going to do is say where we got this information. So here I just Googled grid overlay in Photoshop and found this kind of down a little ways in this stackexchange.com tutorial. I made a copy of it and I'll be adapting it, posting this Google Doc into the video when I'm done. So let's go ahead and take a look at my history here, back way up. So the first thing that we did was view. So we went to up here, view, and then we went to show, and then grid. The shortcut key looks like is command apostrophe. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so command apostrophe will show the grid. Now this won't print out, so this is not what we want. We want to have that grid print. This is a grid that we define. So if we go actually back to our instructions here, it says the first step, step one, Photoshop, preferences, guides, grids, and slices. If we go up here to Photoshop, preferences, you can see grids, guides, grids, and slices. So what we want to do here is for the grid, we actually want to define this. We want to have the color be black. In this case, this is not where we're going to change the color, although if we made it red, it might be easier to see in this particular picture, but you can change, actually it doesn't really matter what the color is. But we want the grid line every 1 inch, and then subdivision equals 1. So this is actually what we want to define here, the grid. We want it to be every 1 inch and 1 subdivision. Click OK. So now you can see there's the grid. Now here's the problem. Our grid goes off on the bottom and on the right sides because it's sort of counting from the top left, and the image size is not even. So what I would strongly recommend doing at this point is going to image size. So if we look at our history here, the next thing I did was change the image size. And when I went to image size, what I did was tried to find an even number that had height and width of even number. So it wasn't like, if I change this to 7, for example, 10.483 doesn't really help me to get this picture to be what I want it to be. So 6 by 9 roughly works there. If you need to crop your photo so that it is the size that you want it to be, this is how you're going to do it. Get the crop tool right here, and then you're going to change the ratio to whatever ratio you want. In this case, you know, I know that it's roughly 6 by 9, and if I know that I want an 8 by 10, I could click here 8 by 10. And then I would just crop this picture, except not a vertical. So I'd click this little arrow here to get the horizontal. And then I could, you know, crop this however I wanted. And then even though I'm not kind of totally lined up on the grid line here, if I click enter, or in this case, I would click enter. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's still going off. That's interesting. So even though, oh, well, I'd have to resize. There it is. So once I resize to 8 by 10, after I crop. So I crop to a specific dimension, I resize to 8 by 10 or whatever the size is that I want. Then you'll see that these grid lines actually line up pretty nicely. Okay, so there it is. There are my grid lines. In this case, I'm actually going to back up to here. This is just a little bit more manageable, this 6 by 9. And we're ready for the next step. So step 2, define the grid as desired. We did that. Select view, show grid. We did that. Check view, grid. Oops. Check view, snap to grid, then check snap. So up here, view, snap to grid. We want that selected, and then we also want this snap selected right here. So those two things. Turn on the paths window. If it isn't already visible, create a new path. So if we go over here to the paths tab. If that's not available, we go window and then paths. We click on it there. What we're going to do is over here, new path. So we say new path. We're going to call this horizontal. And what we're going to do is create a path using the pen tool. So hit P on the keyboard. That's the next step here. Using the pen tool, define a horizontal line segment at the top of the grid. Select single click on the first left side, then the right. So it's really simple. Basically, we're going to go to the pen tool here, click on the grid, boom, Boom. And it's going to draw a straight line right across that whole thing, and it's going to snap to the edges. So it's going to know that that's what I want to do. The next step here, using the path selection tool. Oops, I'm highlighting this. That's not how you spell selection. There we go. Selection tool. A, it's telling me that if I just hit A on the keyboard, the black arrow, click on the path, hold down the Option key, Alt if you're on a PC, to make copies of the object. So here's what we're going to do. Hit the A on the keyboard or click on the black arrow right here, the path selection tool. Hold down the Option key. This is really important. If you have to hold down the Option key to get that little plus. Hold down the Option key, click and drag. And then we're going to keep doing that. So while I'm holding the Option key, I keep clicking and dragging, and you can see that I have now what you can't really see actually. You can see it a little bit better here if I turn the grid lines off. I have a path on the horizontal lines. I'm going to do the same thing for the vertical. So going back here to step 8, create another new path called vertical, new path, call it vertical. And then what I'm going to do is the same thing here, get the pen tool, click and drag from the top to the bottom. Press A to get the selection tool, hold down the Option key, click and drag, and so on. So you have to manually create this grid. It's not, there's no automatic way to kind of do this, but it goes pretty quick actually once you know what you're doing. So I have my horizontal and my verticals. The next step here is 11, to create a new layer for the grid. I would recommend doing this. So you here go to layers, click on the little new layer, which is right next to the trash can down there. It's going to get an empty layer. The palette window, select horizontal path, choose stroke path using the foreground color from the option sub menu. So it's really straightforward. With the layer 1 selected here, go back to paths, click on the horizontal, go up here, stroke path. And what we're going to do is stroke the path. We're going to use the pencil tool, and we're going to say OK. And it's going to automatically fill in that area with the foreground color. So before you do that, I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Hit D on the keyboard, and that will make this black and white. Now, if you hit D on the keyboard, it's going to make this black and white, and then if you hit X, it'll switch it. So watch what happens now if we do the same thing. We're going to stroke path, use the pencil tool, and in this case, it's going to be white. So that may be preferable for an image that has a lot of dark values. You can change that color if you wanted it to be red, for example. We could do that in red. So stroke path, it's going to use the foreground color, and in this case, it's red. I'm going to go ahead and just finish it in red. Select the vertical, stroke path, and OK. And then there's my grid. So if we go back to our layers palette over here, you can see that I have this grid. Even when I turn off, hit Command apostrophe to turn off the grid, I can also deselect the paths, and there is my grid. All right, there's the picture, and there's my grid. So that's how you create a 1 inch by 1 inch grid across a picture. Any picture can do this. You just have to make sure it's an even. I would recommend making sure that it's an even numbered crop, and then you resize the number, and then you add the grid there using the path and the path selection tool. Here you go.